Okay, gentlemen, we have created a new ASP.NET Core web application, and this is .NET 6, the latest version, the latest preview. Please note that we created a web API which uses the minimal API, so the new version of setting up the app, and we also created a controller, a traditional controller as we are used to it. Let's quickly clean up the project, and I ask you to follow along. You can remove the demo data, weather forecast.cs, just remove it. Then you can rename the controller. Maybe you call it, I don't know, log demo controller. Log demo controller would be a good name. Here, see it, log demo controller. And you can delete the entire code inside the log demo controller. So at the end of the day, you just have an empty log demo controller. Let me also quickly recap a feature that I personally like very much. So what I typically do is I put the namespace statement in the first line, add a semicolon, and then I can remove the curly braces. That removes one level of indentation, and I like that better. That is the new modal in the newer version of C#. But it's essentially, yeah, up to you whether you want to have this structure or the structure with the indentation. Let's take a look at how we can add logging, monitoring, and telemetry. Out of the box, ASP.NET Core adds logging functionality. So what you can essentially do, if you have a controller, for instance, you could add an HTTP GET here and say this is a public, I don't know, string, call it ping, and we just return Pong. Very, very simple. That will be available at log demo with an HTTP GET, and it should return Pong. The built-in functionality for logging in ASP.NET Core is that you create a constructor. This constructor gets a dependency injection parameter, which is called iLogger, and you add as a template parameter the log demo controller. Let's call it logger, this one. Store it. And then inside of your method, you can simply say logger.log, I don't know, information, for instance, inside of ping, something like this. Okay? This is dependency injection built into ASP.NET Core applied to the iLogger. You can then simply run your app. Then you will get this one and this one. Give me a sec. And then you can say log demo. It should say Pong. And you see here, you get logging. Trivial thing, very simple, and definitely not enough for our purposes, but it is okay if you want to have basic logging in ASP.NET Core. Simple things should be simple, right? But complex things should be possible, and this is what we are going to add in a minute or so. So let's quickly summarize. Here, in the constructor, inject the iLogger, give it the context, which is the name of the controller, and then you can use methods like log warning, log information, log fatal, or whatever you want. Does anybody need more time? Good. Next step. Now, ASP.NET Core supports a bunch of interesting scenarios, especially things like logging to the console. It works pretty well. If that is what you want to have for a single app, then I'm perfectly fine with it. Go for it. It will work properly. But what if you want to log to a database or a log server, maybe Prometheus for Kubernetes, or Application Insights in Azure, or anything else that you might use in your, I don't know, internship at one company? Now there is a very, very popular library, and this library we're going to use. It's called Serilog. Here. You can Google it, just Google for Serilog. Serilog is very popular, and I think one of the most used logging, monitoring, and telemetry libraries currently in the .NET space. The biggest advantage of Serilog, besides of its great API, is this one. Provided sinks. Sinks are log targets. Let's take a look at those sinks for a second. See, all those sinks here are professional logging targets. It might be a log server from Amazon. It might be a log server for application insights from Microsoft. It might be a database like CouchDB. You can log to the console. You can log to Elastic. You can send logs by email. You can log to files. You get for free automatic rollover. So a new file is created maybe every hour and the file name is automatically generated, and so on and so on. You see? Lots and lots of sinks. And that's the big advantage of Serilog. You in your code, you use Serilog. And then you can flexibly add a log target that fits your needs. Maybe in one app it's sufficient to log to the console. The next app would like to log to the database, and the next app would like to log to application insights because it's running in Azure. Your code will stay the same. Only the configuration will change. Get the idea? It's like writing an app for multiple databases. SQL Server, Oracle, MySQL, and so on. You're writing an app for multiple log systems. And Serilog is the abstraction in the middle. Understood? So let's add Serilog to our application. And that's surprisingly or luckily easy. Of course, we will add it by adding a NuGet package. So please right-click on the solution, choose NuGet package, and then look for Serilog. Serilog here in the NuGet packages. We will use a specific Serilog version, specific for ASP.NET Core, but still take a look at the download numbers. You see that one? 316 million downloads. That's really a thing. So what we are looking for is Serilog for ASP.NET Core. See that one? Serilog ASP.NET Core. That's the first one we want to install. Feel free to take the latest development version. I'm fine with that one. You can also take the latest stable one, but I think, hey, we are living on the edge, right? So let's add the latest pre-release. Serilog ASP.NET Core. I will zoom in. Oops, sorry. Let me first, Serilog ASP.NET Core. The second thing that I like to install is Serilog timings. Serilog timings. Can you remember what I told you about performance analysis with logging? Why is my web API slow? Was it the database query, or was it the second query, or was it my business logic? You want to have a log of all the things that happened in your app, and you want to have it at runtime, not just at development time by using the debugger on your machine. And Serilog timings makes it super, super simple to log the duration of certain operations, like a database query. Okay? So please add Serilog timings also to your app. Take the latest pre-release. I'm fine with that. And last but not least, we need to take a sink. We can use a sink like console or file. That's built in. We don't need to reference them explicitly. They are built into the Serilog package. But we can use different sinks, and I would like to demonstrate a sink. Let me quickly show you that. One that is really nice for learning because it's so low-key, it's so easy to use, it's SEC. There is a company called Datalust, and they created a system which is called SEC. It's part of my GitHub repository, but you can also open this website up directly by typing in the URL. SEC, and this is the big advantage, can be installed locally, and SEC is free for personal use. So we can install it on all your machines, and we can easily use it. If we want to use application insights, we need an Azure account, and we need to create an application insights, and maybe if we store a little bit more data, we have to pay for it. It would be very professional, but we have to organize a lot of things, maybe even money, to use it. And SEC, for personal usage, for teaching and learning, is free and can be installed locally. So what I ask you for is first to go to ASP.NET Core back here and look for Serilog and sec. Serilog and sec. And here you see you get the sync for sec. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that sec is the only or best log server. Not at all. It's a good thing. It's a rather small one for small teams or personal use. But the principle is exactly the same. It doesn't matter whether you use Elastic or SAC or Application Insights. The general principle is always the same. So adding the sec sync was the first thing that we need for our next exercise. And then I ask you to download and install sec on your machine. Okay, welcome back after the break. I heard that the sec download didn't finish over the school internet yet. No problem, let it run in the background, it's perfectly fine. We will get back to that in a second. We have enough to deal with before we really get started. The first thing is I would like to set up Serilog together with you. And yeah, I finished this task for you. So what you can do is you can take a look at our courses GitHub repository. And there you will find a folder lectures. And here API error handling. And here you have the server. And then you see the program.cs. And we will now copy a bunch of lines from this file. I will walk you through all the necessary lines. Let me send you this link through Discord so you do not have to look it up on your own. And then we are going to copy some things for it. For your records, I have added lots and lots of documentation to this lecture's sample app. So you do not need to write everything down. You can find all the necessary documentation links directly in the source code comments. Okay? The first thing is we want to make sure that we get logging even for the startup of the web application. So the first thing that we will do in program.cs is setting up a logger. That is a Serilog logger. What we do is we say, let's give us a logger configuration. Make sure that we log all information messages because during system startup we want to see everything. Now, this one is not that important. I will not go into the details. If you want to know more, please read the docs. Use the console logger because during startup we don't have anything else. We haven't even read the configuration file yet. So how should we get a database connection string, for instance? This is the very, very early stage of booting up the application, so we need to log to the console if something crashes on in that phase. And last, we create the bootstrap loader, which is the logger for the bootstrapping process. So please copy these few lines and put them in your program.cs at the very beginning. You will have to add some usings, Serilog, and I think here you need Serilog events, and I think then we are good. Good. That will give us a Serilog bootstrap logger. Next, I would like to enclose everything in a try-catch block. I assume that you know what a try-catch block is. So please do that. Let's clean up a little bit, something like this. Let's catch the exception. And let's do a finally once we are done with everything. Now you can take a look at my GitHub repository, what we should do in the catch case and in the finally case. In the catch case, we are going to log the exception. This is really critical, a fatal error, because that means that our app couldn't start properly. So this is what we want to copy for the exception case. Making sure that we see fatal exceptions. And last but not least, finally, this one. log and close, log, close and flush means write everything to the log. And at the end we can say return 0. By convention, console apps should return 0 in case of everything went well, and a non-zero return value indicates an error. That's just best practice. It's a little bit more complicated if you take a look at the details, but it's fine. Okay? This is the first step, and if you want to give it a try, you can run it. Nothing special will happen. The app will come up. We can take a look at the app output. And nothing really happened yet. It should still start. Everything is good. But let's try the Serilog logger. So inside of the try statement, just to note that we are here, we are going to say log.information, and here we say starting the web host. Okay, something like this. Give me a sec. And if you run it now, again, let's take a look at the output. Oops, I was too fast. Here. Whoa. What happened? Where am I? So now I'm here. See, this output is from Serilog. The rest of the output here is from the traditional ASP.NET Core console logging. So we have now succeeded in building a Serilog logger for the booting process, but we have not succeeded in changing the ASP.NET Core console logging towards Serilog. That will be our next step. You had a question. Next, we want to set up the final logger. And just like with databases, we do not want to hard code things like write to console or write to application insights or write to seg directly in our code. What we want to do is we want to do exactly the same that we do with databases. We want to write the connection information, the configuration information in the app settings JSON file. This is where I want to easily switch from console to file, from file to seg, from seg to application insights. I don't want to change my application code at all. Everything should be configured through the app settings JSON file. And this is exactly what we are going to do. So you do not need to look up the details of Serilog and app settings JSON because I did it for you. So please go one level up and open the app settings JSON file. In the app settings JSON file, I edit again the documentation links, but you find the default configuration of Serilog immediately in that file. So you see that one? The whole Serilog section. This is what you need. So please copy this section. And you can also replace the default logging section that is inside of your app settings JSON, because we are going to use Serilog instead of ASP.NET Core. Let's quickly take a look at what we find inside of this file. The first line, this using line here, this one, tells Serilog where we want to write our logs to. And the good news is we don't have to choose. We can send our logs to multiple locations. We can write it in a file for later analysis. We can print it on the screen for console, and we can send it to seg if we want. So you can have multiple syncs at the same time. I guess the seg download has not finished yet. Has it?
Yes.
It has? Then please take a second to install seg. At the end, once you have installed seg, you can run the seg service administration and just press next, 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 next. You don't need to configure anything. And if you succeeded, you should be able to launch this program, browse seg, and that should give you this UI. So let's take a few minutes and make sure that SEC runs on all your machines. So one thing is still missing. Now we have everything in the app settings JSON. By the way, if you take a look down here, you can add additional information, additional configuration information for the console logger, for the file logger. It will log into a folder called logs. For the sec, that should be the default port, and so on and so on. If you want to know the details about how to configure all this stuff, please take a look at the documentation link and read the necessary details there. For us, we need to change or add an additional setting in program.cs because now we have to tell ASP.NET Core that it should use Serilog and it should read the settings from app settings JSON. And this is done with another statement in our program.cs. So going to the program.cs, and the thing that we need in order to make Serilog read our config file is this line here. It says builder.host.use Serilog, and we are going to tell the system that it should read the configuration data from our configuration context, which is appsettings.json. The rest is detail information that we don't need to care about. It just works. Copy this one and put it after the create builder step, this one. And this will make sure, as I said, that Serilog reads our app settings JSON. This one. So we had a bootstrapper logger. Now we made Serilog read the app settings JSON file. And the last step that we need is we have to exchange ASP.NET logging with Serilog logging. So please take this one and put it after the app builder blah. Once you had that, you can run it again, your app. And if you didn't make a mistake, the output should approximately look like that. Can you see that one? That indicates already that it looks like Serilog output. Yes. So if you manage to do that, we are good. I will show you that. I copied two things. First, this one for reading the configuration, and this one, this is for logging the requests. So again, this here is for reading app settings, and additionally, it enables Serilog. And the second one, to be more specific now, this is the middleware for logging every request. I should see this output, and now comes the important thing. If I go to sec here, and if I press reload, I immediately, without doing anything, should see all the details. Nice! And then I can click on one, and I see all the details. I see the host, I see the path, I see the method, I see the request ID, and I see a lot of other information. So I already see what's going on. That's nice, isn't it? For instance, if I want to have all the HTTP GET requests, I can simply go up there and say, please filter based on the method. You see, you get nice IntelliSense. Let me zoom up a little bit so you see it better. Method equals to GET. And if you press enter, you see all the GET requests. Can remove this one. And you will again get everything. Later on, we can easily use these toggles here on the right-hand side. We can say, show me all errors. Currently, there are no errors. Show me all warnings. Currently, there are no warnings. I think you get the idea, right? We can do some statistics with some queries. See? if we run sec for a longer amount of time, we will get a nice statistics at what clock hour we have how many requests. We can analyze whether users are using our app during the night or not. So now we have replaced Serilog, and now you see a lot of the things in practice which I told you previously in theory. Also, if you take a look in your Solution Explorer, you should now have a folder which says logs, and inside of the folder logs you have a log.txt, and you can easily take a look at the generated logs down there. So exactly what we discussed before. It's not enough to just log on the console. We want to log to a file to store it for later analysis. Maybe we want to use that for machine learning purposes to detect certain malicious attackers. And we can also store it to a professional log server like SEC to have a nice query language, to build dashboards, to do log analysis, to do real-time monitoring of our service. In real world, SEC would not run on your local computer, but you would have a dedicated computer running SEC, and all your servers will send their logs towards the SEC server. And then you can use the UI that you saw here to analyze the logs and the behaviors of all your servers in your data center. Again, SEC is a small to medium solution. If you want to use that for tens of thousands of servers, or if you are in the Google Cloud or Amazon Cloud or Azure Cloud, they have their own logging servers which work even better and which offer even more functionalities like, than SEC. Absolutely, you can configure the log file name, you can configure how often a new log file is created, you can configure the retention period, so you can decide that certain old logs are automatically deleted, everything. Just take a look at the code that I gave you. It contains a link, you see, to the provided syncs. If you follow this link, just look up the file sync here, and if you scroll down, you will see all the different settings. For instance here, rolling interval, see that one? You see you can define the output template and a lot of other things that you can configure here. Okay. Yep, so it's really powerful. Now let's write a little bit of code. We will not write it, we will just copy it because the code is so simple, it doesn't pay off to write it manually. We will simply copy it from my prepared parts, and yeah, with that we can progress a little faster. First, let's stay inside of program.cs. I ask you to go into my prepared program.cs and copy the first two mapget methods. These mapget methods, just to refresh our memories, this is the ASP.NET Core minimal API that we talked about at the beginning of this semester. So you see, this is very simple. It just answers for ping, and this here answers for request context. But then, inside of this second one, we have something interesting. We get something which is called the IDiagnosticContext. And then we set something on the diagnostic context. We set a user ID. Of course, this is a dummy value. Please imagine that you have a real username here. Somebody logged in. Somebody sent you a token. And you take the username from the token. And let's see what that has to do with login. Copy these two mapgets and put them somewhere here between the map controllers and the app run. Somewhere here. The IDiagnosticContext is a part of Serilog. This is something that Serilog gives you. It's easier to try it than to theoretically talk about it. So run your app. Once it runs, you can maybe put the app on one side and put Serilog on the other side. Serilog has the possibility that you can click here and say display everything starting with now, because then you have an empty area. And here you can say tail, that will automatically refresh your view when something happens. So you can go on the right hand side and simply run, for instance, ping. that will return Pong, and see, on the left-hand side, you immediately see what's going on. Now let's take this request context thing. You can also take a look at my screen, because it works exactly the same on your machine. If I call this request context, and if I take a look in Serilog again, I will see the request of the, here, request context. Here it is. And we see the HTTP request, and yeah, that's the point. Please take a look here. And the important thing is this one, and the important thing is this one. So what you can essentially do is you can add additional diagnostics metadata to your API requests. Because during log analysis, you sometimes are not interested in technical details, just like the HTTP status code, but you simply want to see everything that a certain user did. Imagine that a user calls you, the user Franz, and Franz tells you something is wrong, and you want to quickly see what Franz did in the last 30 minutes. Then you need to understand what requests came from Franz. So you have to store his user ID somehow, because otherwise you don't see it from the log. And that's the point here. It's possible, very easily possible, with Serilog to add additional diagnostics informations to your requests. And then you can filter with it. So I can go here and I can simply say user ID equals someone, something like this. And that will give me immediately all the requests that came from someone. And in my sample, this would be Franz. And of course, I don't have a Franz, so yeah, I don't get anything. But I think you get the point, right? So remember that. With the IDiagnosticContext, you can add additional information that you might need to analyze your logs properly. The next example that I would like to show you is in the log demo controller. Please open the log demo controller. And here we also already saw that we are using ASP.NET Core logging with the iLogger. So let's check whether this iLogger nicely integrates into Serilog. Run your app, go for log demo /ping. How did I call it? Log demo. Oh yes, sorry, I didn't call it ping. I'm sorry. Yep, Pong. So if I take a look here in SAC, you will see that I now also have the log messages which I wrote with iLogger from ASP.NET Core. So if you have an application that is already using ASP.NET Core logging and you add Serilog, your logs are not lost. They are just redirected to Serilog, and whatever syncs you have configured, they are automatically inside of this one. A very important feature of ASP.NET Core is the request ID. Please take a look at my screen. See that one? Every HTTP request that comes into your system gets a unique ID. And you can correlate all the log messages that have been written in the context of this HTTP request with this ID. So what I can do is I can copy this request ID. Give me a second. And I can say request ID equals to this one. And if I run it, you see, I see all the things which happened during this one request. I see that it was for log demo. I see the ASP.NET Core logging. I see a lot of automatically added logs. And I see also the response message here. And I see that it took in total here 187 milliseconds. So with the request ID, I can find everything. Let me make one final demo and then I'll take questions, okay? Please add something to your app. Throw new invalid operation exception. Something bad happened. Okay? Just throw an exception. Then you can remove the return statement. Please use your imagination. That would be an error when accessing the database. That would be some division by 0 because you screwed up when writing the application code. Whatever reason, there is an exception. So let's try this one. Restart your app or press hot reload. I don't care, both work. And then we call it again. So here, log demo, boom, crash. I don't care, let's continue. Okay, we get an unhandled exception. Now let's take a look at sec. What we now have, see that one? We have errors. First, we have the HTTP request, which is marked as an error because we were returning the HTTP status code 500, which is an internal server error. But even more important, we can click here on that one, and we will see first the unhandled exception. We will see the request ID, so we can try to find out what was the reason for the problem. And then we see the entire stack trace. You see it here? And with that stack trace, I should be able to detect what was going on. You said at the beginning, at the Blackboard session, you said, server crashed, I need to find out why. This is exactly the information that should lead you on the track of the problem. And now we can also use the filtering, you see? Click on errors and you will see all the errors. So it's pretty simple to keep track of all your problems. Just put a large computer monitor inside of your office at the wall, press on tail, and then just every now and then take a look at your monitor if you have new errors. The next example that I would like to do together with you is a timing example. I would like to show you how we can record some timings, okay? Let's do that. No, sorry, I forgot something. I'm very sorry. Not the timing. We need to do something more basic first. Please add another HTTP GET. This one. Public, I don't know, string. What are we going to do? Create customer, right? And the route should be customers. And maybe add some strange ID. And that's good. ID, int ID. Something like this. And then we want to log something. Please write the following. Logger.log information, log information, something like this. And then we use creating customer ID. A very strange format, isn't it? Aren't we used to do string interpolation? Something like $, blah, and then something like ID. This is what we usually do in C#, right? This is the template string marker, but I don't do that here. And I ask you to follow along, okay? And we just return something. That's all, nothing special. It is important that I use the placeholder with the name of the parameter here. Let me show you why. Let's run the log demo, customers 42, 43, okay. If I go to sec again, not just the errors, what you will get with the log message, here is the log message. I don't know if you see that on the video beamer. Do you see that the 43 has a slightly different color? No, but it does. The point is that I now get the ID as a separate field in my database. So it's not just a string anymore. Yes, it is a string because it says creating customer 43, but it is also structured logging because I can now filter on the ID 43. Get the idea? I don't need to do a string search where the log message contains 43. No, I can really add a structural filter. Just like with the SQL statement, I can do a where clause. So what I can do is I can say ID equals to 43, and I will get exactly that log. And that is super, super powerful. And it's important to do structured logging. It's not enough to just write something on the console. Can you remember what I told you at the beginning at this Blackboard session? I told you that it's not enough to write strings on the console because you cannot analyze them properly. Now you can. And now we can go to timing. Now we can easily combine the timing here with the sample of the structured logging. That's fine. Let's combine the timing here. Imagine that we are going to do a database query here in this create customer, maybe an insert operation. For that we do the following. We say using operation.time we need Serilog timings. And here we can give this thing a name. Do some DB query. And here we can say thread.sleep for 500 milliseconds. Just to simulate a database query. Of course, in reality, we would use async await, and we would use entity framework, and we would say await save changes async and all the stuff. You know this. You know the drill. Now here I'm just simulating something that takes 500 milliseconds. And the important thing is this operation.time with the using block. So what it will automatically do, it will automatically create a stopwatch and stop the timing here and log the timing to the log. So if you rerun the app here, operation.time, everything is part of our lectures GitHub repository. So if you can't follow, just take a look at the GitHub repo. And if I say log demo, customers 43, it will take a second, and if I take a look at sec, it will tell me, if I remove here, it will tell me that here, that it took 509.1 milliseconds to execute the database query. I can click on the details, and you will see the exact elapsed time. And again, try to follow. I know that you might not see the value now, but imagine that you are a DevOps person and you are not just responsible for writing correct code, but you have to run this app. This is super critical. Imagine you have hundreds of thousands of these requests in your database and you want to have a statistical analysis. How long does this database query take? And maybe it took 500 milliseconds, but suddenly it takes 3 seconds. Then you have a problem, and now you know why. Because then you know exactly what the problem is. That's what I mean with having a built-in X-ray machine, Röntgengerät, into your app, because you can take a look in the app while it's running. Wasn't super complicated, was it? Program.cs, 3-4 lines, little bit of app settings JSON, and we are good. So let me think about what else we have. No, the Serilog part is pretty done. Let me check my notes. Yes, the Serilog part is pretty done. So we will change the topic a little bit. We still are in the area of error handling and logging, but we are going to take a look at a slightly different angle of logging, monitoring, and telemetry.